It's about 8:30 in the morning on Thursday, August 14th, 2025. And I'm just out here sitting in the shade watching the animals move. I heard some people were complaining in the UK that their temperature is over 30 degrees Celsius, which I guess is like 85 or something Fahrenheit. And if you're wondering, here in Northeast Texas, it probably only gets down to 75 degrees Fahrenheit at night. That's like in the early morning right before the sun comes up. And then during the day, it's like 90s. Sometimes it'll get close to 100. Sometimes, like I think yesterday was up to 89. So you can pull out your calculator and do the math. If you're wondering why Americans use Fahrenheit and not centigrade, it's because Fahrenheit was the guy that figured out how to make accurate thermometers that can be repeated. And so the thermometers that he made were always, calibrated and exact. And so since England was the first country really to adopt the science of thermodynamics and to take it seriously, what is going on over there? Anyway, that's why it's stuck. We've been doing this for longer than Europe has. The Celsius was actually, I think the Europeans wanted to, they said, oh, we can't use the English system. And that's what a lot of, like the metric system is the same kind of thing. Like there's no reason why we shouldn't be using units that make sense. Like we could say like, oh, let's just, make the inch the standard or the foot the standard and measure everything with feet instead of meters or whatever. But no, they had to introduce a new measurement that, if you remember how the meter was introduced, I'm sorry, I'm just ranting right now. If you remember how the meter was introduced, the French had a revolution and they thought it would be a good idea to invent arbitrary units. And so they decided that the distance from the equator to the North Pole divided by a certain number was going to be a meter. And of course, how do you measure that distance? A very difficult thing to do, and they got it wrong the first time, as expected. But every unit, every measurement is arbitrary. Somebody decided this is what it's going to be, and that's what it is. And you might as well choose units that are convenient. Like, for instance, the width of my finger is an inch, right? So that's 4 inches. That's called a hand. 12 inches is a foot. It wasn't always this way, but that's what we use today in America. So, and if we're building something and we need to get everything exact and proper, we settle on a unit, typically inches, so we'll say it's 84 inches, which is like 7 feet. But our tape measures all have numbers in inches, and we can do fractions of an inch. We can do like half an inch or a quarter of an inch, which typically once you get to a quarter of an inch when you're building a house, that's close enough, We could also do decimal fractions of an inch if we wanted to, tenths of an inch and hundredths of an inch. I know machinists like to use thousandths of an inch. They call it a thou. But as long as you have a unit that's consistent, it doesn't matter where it came from. Anyway, so Fahrenheit. I really like the Fahrenheit system. 100 degrees is a hot day. 0 degrees is a very, very cold day. Yeah, you have to remember that 32 is what temperature the water freezes at, but that's pure water. The standard temperature, standard pressure, I mean. And salt water freezes at 0 degrees Fahrenheit, which I think is more useful because you're more likely to have water that's contaminated with some kind of salt. But nobody really knows what Fahrenheit was using to build his thermometers, what standards he was using. He had like 4 or 5, we think, but he kept that a secret, and it went with him to the grave. But after Fahrenheit, we figured out, and we told people how to build thermometers that are accurate, and the whole Celsius thing was like, let's arbitrarily divide things into 100. The only temperature scale that really makes sense is absolute zero. Being 0, that's the Kelvin scale. The only issue with the Kelvin scale is the temperatures we deal with every day, are in the hundreds, and so you don't really know if it's a hot day or cold day. You're like, well, it's 269 today or 273. You're like, what does that even mean? You don't know if that's hot or cold. But I like Fahrenheit because you rarely have to deal with negative numbers. With centigrade, Celsius, you're always if it's a cold day, if it's snowing, it's below 0, so it's negative. You have to use negative numbers a lot, but anyway, not that it really matters anymore. Anyway, so you guys are complaining up there in the UK that it's like 80 something degrees, and just know that it doesn't really get much colder than 80 degrees at night. Our humidity is probably much higher than yours too. So your 85 degree day compared to ours, you'd come over here, you'd probably die. You'd probably just have a heart attack and die. But the human body adapts. You know, there's like jungle people living in temperatures that are basically unlivable, or you'd think it would be unlivable, but they get used to it. Their body adapts to it. I remember stories about people coming home from the Iraq War, where it would regularly get over 120 degrees. They would come to Kuwait and they would have them parkas, because in Kuwait the temperatures were like 90, and they would freeze. They'd shiver because it's so cold to them. And then a couple weeks later they'd fly them back home, and so they'd arrive here in the hot summer of Texas wearing coats and sweaters and stuff like that because it's too cold for them. So you do adapt. And this whole thing about global warming nonsense, Dave Heller, I believe, did a good job of trying to expose historic data so that regular people can look at it. It's all a scam. It has all the obvious signs of a scam. And there's no science behind it, you know. The stuff that they talk about is just gobbledygook. It makes no sense from a thermodynamics perspective. The whole idea of like a greenhouse gas reflecting radiation and making things warmer is ridiculous on its face when you understand how thermodynamics works. That was some ideas that Arrhenius had, and that was before thermodynamics was properly understood. And so he was basing his idea partially off of medieval concepts that we since determined are completely wrong. You know, when it comes to heat exchange between two bodies, the exact mechanism of the heat exchange really isn't that important. You know, when two bodies are different temperatures, they're going to find some way to spread the energy around to bring the two temperatures to equilibrium, right? And you can only slow that process down. You can't stop it. Like even in a vacuum, the radiation will be able to share energy, you know. And that's really what's going on, is you have energy transfer between those two bodies. And some of the energy will increase the net energy of one side and lower the energy of the other side, and some will do the opposite. But there's a definite flow of energy from one body to the other. The hotter body sheds energy, and the colder body absorbs it. I got some sheep that broke out. I need to go get them back inside. There's about 3 of them out there starting a new life on their own. But yeah, so the net result is that it, you know, we can measure carbon dioxide. We can measure exactly what its thermal conductivity is. It's really not that different from all of the other gases in the atmosphere. And you know, increasing or decreasing carbon dioxide really doesn't change anything, you know, and there's lots of evidence that that's true. Historical, geological evidence too, you know. Anyway, guys, try to stay cool. Don't wear sweaters in the summer. That's silly. Wear a thin shirt. Cotton is best. You know, cotton helps to absorb your sweat, and when you get a gentle breeze, it cools you off quick. You know, make sure you're drinking plenty of water. If you're drinking too much water, you could deplete your electrolytes, and so you'll get sick in a different way. So if you're drinking lots of water, make sure you're eating lots of salt. You know, here in Northeast Texas, we put a lot of salt on our food. You come down here and you eat our food, it's going to be salty, and that's because we need that salt to replenish the sweat. So if you're sweating a lot and you're drinking a lot of water, you better be eating a lot of salt too. Salt is not a poison. It will not make you sick. There are certain people that will get sick from salt. They have very special conditions, but you're probably not one of them. Go ahead and put that salt on your burger and on your fries. What do you guys call them? Chips. You know, and just enjoy the warmth while it lasts. When it gets cold, that's when people start dying. Cold is bad. So have a great day, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.